So the president is determined, even if he's being mocked by world leaders on camera, is determined to go home and declare this NATO summit a success.
Yeah, because President Macron criticized it, and yesterday Donald Trump became the great defender of NATO, which spun a lot of heads. And Senator Booker, I would just ask you about this view of the world from President Trump, and specifically the view of NATO as sort of a financial transaction. We keep hearing about the 2% threshold that was agreed to in 2014. That seems to be the litmus test of how he feels about you, not just as a leader, but as a nation. Are you paying enough to be a part of this organization that has been a safeguard in the world for generations?
Well, first of all, he radically misconceives exactly what that is. This is not them paying to some common piggy bank, those words that were used. But more than that, we are literally on the Foreign Relations Committee, I travel a lot and meet with world leaders, and to see their fears and their concerns about, he calls it America first. This is really America isolated, America alone, America pulling away from alliances, international agreements, Paris Climate Accords, understanding that we are the indispensable nation. And to have a president who so distorts who our friends are and who our enemies, has a better relationship with Putin than he does with Macron or Merkel, is problematic. And look, before Ambassador Yovanovitch was a household name, I was sitting with her in a basement bunker, our military meeting with a Ukrainian military. And when our military leaders, and Senator McCaskill knows it, Claire knows it. I feel like I'm at the caucus lunch sitting next to her as she's making fun of my vegan food.
Yes, true, all true. Where's the meat?
But you literally have our military leaders recalling what's going on with Russia right now, a hybrid war. This was the terminology I learned when I was first traveling on the Foreign Relations Committee, that NATO's urgency right now, with the Russians now intervening in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonians, elections. Heck, the New York Times had a great expose about how they're perfecting this in places like Madagascar and how to undermine Western democracies and free societies. NATO's urgency in this moment on the world stage, with climate crises coming, with things like Syria, with the challenges that we're facing with Russian aggression in Ukraine, and the challenges of Western democracy we're seeing in Hungary or even Turkey, their behavior of recent. This is a very problematic thing, that you have a president that not only doesn't seem to even understand NATO's critical role, but on the world stage just insulted, called the leader of Canada our most essential ally, who's been there with us in every conflict since 9/11, standing in partnership with us in so many ways. To just throw out a schoolyard taunt or punch like that was a moment that they still stun me when I hear our president do that.
And that comment, Senator, as you know, was in response to a question about some video that's been out there this morning of world leaders, including Prime Minister Trudeau and Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and President Macron of France sort of circled up, and it appears that they're making fun of President Trump. Put that together with the way we've seen some of these leaders push back on President Trump at this NATO summit. What picture does it paint of where we are in the world right now?
America right now cannot be trusted. Our allies do no longer trust us. It is weakening the fabric of democracies at a time that the planet Earth is seeing the rise of totalitarianism or authoritarian governments. As I mentioned, from Hungary to, heck, when I went down to meet with Jeff Flake, we flew down to meet with the new leader of Zimbabwe, Emerson Mnangagwa, to be hard with him, talk about American sanctions. He was landing from China at a time where he was saying that Chinese don't care what I do with free and fair elections, humanitarian rights. There is a global conflict going on between our form of government and the authoritarian government. And this president seems to be weakening Western and democratic alliances and playing into the very playbook that the Russians are trying to use to undermine us. And this is problematic. And by the way, Senator, you know this, Republicans know this. When I'm sitting around with my Republican colleagues on the Foreign Relations Committee, they know what's going on. And this is what frustrates me, even about this impeachment proceedings right now. I don't argue with me that this is not impeachable behavior, but don't tell me that this is not moral vandalism going on from the White House, where a president's using taxpayer dollars to hold hostage a country until they do what his political bidding is. Nobody can defend the behavior. You can argue whether it's impeachable or not, but we are in a crisis in our country right now that we're pulling back from the world stage and we're violating our values.
Right. All right, Senator. So I'm going to get back. Let's get back to what we just saw in a minute. But I want to ask you, obviously, about the big news from the campaign trail yesterday about Kamala Harris, your colleague, getting out of the race. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's problematic to me, and frankly, it just wasn't a good day. When I'm hearing from my own family members, black women in my family, that, wait, I don't understand this, that you see people in this race who legitimately do not have the kind of pathway that she still had to compete in Iowa, that she's
right.
exiting the race, and we're going to see potentially a debate stage with, right now, only 6 people have qualified. All of them are white. When we won our last election, the last big presidential record turnout, massive Obama coalition, came because the fullness of the Democratic Party came out, including almost 1 million more African-American votes in 2012 than in 2016. We lost Michigan, we lost Wisconsin, we lost Pennsylvania. If African-American vote had been nearly what it was in 2012, we would be talking about President Hillary Clinton right now. And so
right.
To be in this race right now, I tell you, if anything, I got calls from civil rights leaders yesterday, Congressional Black Caucus leaders yesterday, telling me to fight on, because we know that the debate stage, the rules that they're using, when I'm number 3 in net favorability in Iowa, when I lead in Iowa, New Hampshire, and local endorsements, when we have by the Des Moines
right.
Register the best, one of the 2 best organizations on the ground, and to have artificial means to keep folks in my voice out of this race? No way. I'm fighting harder now than ever before, because I think I have
right.
the best chance of resurrecting that coalition that had us have record turnouts in the past.
So talk about your frustration. And by the way, we've mentioned it already today. It's a frustration that Barack and Michelle Obama felt in early fall of 2007. That, you were talking about right now, no black leaders on the stage for the next debate. Of course, that's decided in part by polls and polls that are showing that right now, for whatever reason, black voters, especially older black voters, are gravitating to Joe Biden predominantly. Kamala was never able to break through that support. Obama did. Of course, President Obama did later in 2007.
Exactly.
But what do you have to do? How frustrating is it for you, first of all? But secondly, what do you have to do to break through and get the sort of support you need from black, and not only black leaders, but older black voters, younger black voters, that will get you on that next debate stage?
So 2 quick answers. First and foremost, if we were allowing the past to influence what our decisions are now, we would not be putting so much stock in polls, because never in the lifetime of any of us here has there ever been someone who's leading in the polls here in December that has gone on to the White House in the Democratic Party. Never. Carter at 1% around now, Clinton around 4%, Barack Obama 20 points behind Secretary Clinton at this point in the campaign, and losing to her in South Carolina until he showed. So for us, it's very simple. We are running the kind of race with the ingredients that help people like Kerry go on from 4% in December to winning in Iowa. We have what it takes, but right now we just need help. If this is going to be a new barrier that the DNC is going to put up, we need people to go out there and go to CoryBooker.com and contribute, so we can run the kind of ads you're seeing from the billionaires in this race that are bumping up their numbers. We need folks to go to CoryBooker.com and keep my voice in this race. And here's the interesting thing.
So you talked about.
I want to make sure you got that.
I think he said CoryBooker.com. Was it CoryBooker.com?
It was. Thank you, John.
Okay, very good. So we got that out of the way. So you brought up billionaires. Talk about your emotions. Talk about the emotions of your supporters, the feelings of your supporters, the concerns of your supporters, that you have been working so hard around the clock. Your people have been working so hard around the clock. We've talked about how you're doing the blocking and tackling right. You're building organizations correctly. And Mike Bloomberg comes in at the last minute. And I know that had to play into Kamala's decision, because here's a guy that can just blanket California on Super Tuesday with ads. Does something need to be done to stop billionaires from being able to come into a race and just basically helicopter into a race after everybody else has been fighting for a year and write a $40 million check? and start moving up in the polls?
Look, I have very strong feelings on campaign finance. What I've seen in Washington, the time I've been there, I would invite Claire to comment on this, is the money in politics right now is so corrosive. People on both sides of the aisle understand this. We've got to change this system, or else we're going to be moving working class people out of politics altogether, and it's going to be an area for millionaires and billionaires. But the backlash, you don't need to go to my supporters. Go to Iowa right now and see what from the media, the head of the Iowa starting line just wrote out a message saying, if you're called by a pollster, no matter who you're supporting at this point, or if you're undecided, choose Cory Booker, because he deserves to be on that stage as much or more than people that are on that stage who don't have the same level of a campaign that I have in that state. So if you're starting to see the backlash from Iowa media and Iowans themselves saying this is getting kind of ridiculous, we should be choosing who goes on out of the Iowa primary, not artificial barriers or how many millions you have in your personal bank account. And so that is a little frustrating. This was a point that John Kerry lent his campaign $5 million and then went on to win. I do not have $5 million. I made a decision coming out of law school to move to the lowest income area and be a nonprofit lawyer as I started my career. So I don't have those personal millions to sustain. And by the way, if Kamala did, she said she was about $5 million short, if I have that correct. She would still be competing in Iowa right now. And by the way, her voice, whatever you think, I'm in this race because I think I'm a better choice than her, but my sister, her voice, she was bringing things to the table, bringing up issues that the Democratic Party will be woefully lacking. Julian Castro bringing things to the table, bringing things to this debate that in a party that desperately needs Black and Latino voters. And the move, when I was hearing from my female family members who felt some kind of way yesterday, we have a problem right now in the Democratic Party. And my key is I'm in this to beat Donald Trump. And we need, and I love sitting here next to Claire because she represents where the Democratic Party is. We won back the House of Representatives because of the broadness of our party, because we had people like Mikey Sherrill, people who can appeal to moderates in this race. If we don't have voices that can unite the wholeness of our party to make us a bigger tent, and we're not, and this is why I have a lot of love for Claire, because I've heard her go off in private in caucus meetings. The Democratic Party's end should not be to beat Republicans. Our end should be to unite Americans in common cause. That's the next leader we need for this country, somebody who begins to heal this nation. And I worry about the way politics runs right now, that the people like Claire and others that I know are not finding a way to get to the table. And so yesterday was not a happy day for me. When we need leaders in this country that can call to all of us, our common cause and our common spirit, because we got common pain right now, but we've got to get back to a sense of common purpose.
You have been preaching unification, coming together, getting the ugly out, running a White House with character. And that part to me is what's frustrating, is that to me seems like the message that most folks I talk to at the grocery store are sick of the polarization. They're sick of, it's my way or the highway. And talk about your frustration about that message not resonating like, frankly, I thought it would at this point. Is it because you don't have the resources to really break through? And by the way, the debate requirement that you have supporters in 20 states and you have 200,000 supporters, that was designed to get around the billionaires.
Right.
Clearly that's not working because Steyer made the stage.
Right.
And Steyer is only there because he's a billionaire and he's been able to write these big checks for advertising. Are we failing at trying to keep billionaires from buying a spot?
Right, and so I just want to go to the first part of your question, because what you say you meet at your supermarket, I live in an inner city and I hear it at mine. I grew up with two civil rights leaders who talked about the dignity and the nobility of our civil rights generation. You would see men in their black suits and their ties. They were being yelled at using the kind of language we hear from Wallace and, frankly, Trump, that yet they still met that with a dignity and a gravity that was able to call to all of America.
Right.
When they watched what was happening on the Edmund Pettus Bridge or in Birmingham, they saw, wait a minute.
We want to be part of that.
We want to be part of that.
Right.
And so this country doesn't need right now more Trumpism. It needs people that saying, whatever your party is, let's get back to that honor and that dignity, because that's who we are. And by the way, the alacrity, the joy with which the Russians and others, our enemies, are seeing us tear each other down, that's our weakness. It really is. E pluribus unum is a hallmark of our country for a reason. And our founders knew that when they talked at the end of the Declaration of Independence. They put forth a Declaration of Interdependence saying we have to pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. So when you talk about that honor, that I appreciate. And so for us, it's very simple. I'm in this to fight. There's an Oscar-nominated documentary about me called Street Fight. I didn't beat a machine in Newark because I didn't know how to fight. But I'm not going to change my message right now. The way we've won battles in the past on my team is by the fight you want is to bring people together. That's where our strength comes from. And so for me, it is right now doing the best we can in fundraising, because I don't want to drop out because I'm not a billionaire. Make that stage, which means Iowans, South Carolinians, Nevada, Granite Staters choosing us. I'm more determined now than ever, and I'm happy that we're trending on Twitter this morning, that we had one of our better fundraising days yesterday, because people are starting to wake up to realize this is the message we want.
On that point, Senator Harris has dropped out in part because of fundraising issues. You're having concerns about fundraising. So much of that is because of the focus on the early states,
yes.
Iowa and New Hampshire. There could be this next debate without a candidate of color on the stage. Is that because these early states, Iowa and New Hampshire, are nearly all white in terms of residents? And should that change? Should different states be at the top of the calendar?
I want to disconnect those things. Iowa chose the first black president of the United States. I'm not concerned about the lack of diversity I'm really not, because we have 4 states that have geographic diversity, racial diversity. I am concerned that the unintended consequences of the rules that have been written allows a billionaire, and by the way, there will now be, if this debate stage stays what it is right now, this 2020 election will have more billionaires than black people. That allows billionaires to be on that stage and not people that have legitimate chances to win the nomination. My campaign is evolving the same way President Obama's did, the same way that Jimmy Carter and others who talked to the larger aspirational goals didn't break through right away. But God, when our team is at number 3 in net favorability in Iowa and climbing, the popularity of my campaign, and people may say we haven't chosen you yet, but 80% of the people have not settled on their final choice. So we're confident on our pathway to win in Iowa, to upset in Iowa. We're seeing local news write about the fact that we have the makings of an upset. But I believe this artificial hurdles for this debate stage right now are having the unintended consequences of having minority voices, which are essential to our party, essential to moving our party to the right policy and right positions, are being excluded. And that's problematic for a party that will rely on black and Latino, black and brown, I should say, Asian Americans and others, turning out at record numbers, not just to win the presidency, but to win back critical Senate seats that we need from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, to Arizona.
All right, Senator Cory Booker, you know why you're trending right now, because you're sitting next to Claire on Morning Joe.
I love this. You guys are doing more of a mitzvah than you know by giving me some Claire McCaskill energy, which I woefully miss.
Great to see you. We've been really enjoying following your campaign. Okay,
thank you.
Senator Cory Booker, thank you. Up next, what to expect from today's impeachment hearing in the Judiciary Committee. Now, just about 1 hour away, a lot going on. Keep it right here on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.